Her Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali, Honorable Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet, Excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps, Speakers, Presiding Officers, Presidents of Senates, and Honorable Members of Parliament, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We will now have the parade of the flags of the different countries which are here with us today. If the delegations can get ready, and we will have, please assemble outside along with your flags. Here we go again. Anguilla, led by Barbara Webster-Bourne, the Speaker of the House. Anguilla. Thank you. Antigua and Barbuda, led by Alicia Williams Grant, President of the Senate. Barbados, led by the Honorable Arthur Holder, Speaker of the House, and Reginald Farley, President of the Senate. Belize, led by the Honorable Valerie Woods, Speaker of the House. British Virgin Islands, led by the Honorable Marlon Penn. Cayman Islands, Mr. Honorable McKeever Bush. That wasn't McKeever Bush, that was actually Catherine Ebanks Wilkes. Dominica, the Honorable Joseph Isaac, Speaker of the House. Grenada, led by President of the Senate, Desina Williams. Guyana, led by the Honorable Gail Teixeira. St. Christopher, St. Kitts, led by Lauren Blanchett, Speaker. St. Lucia, led by the Honorable Alvina Reynolds, President of the Senate, and Claudia Francis, Speaker of the Euphrates. Turks and Caicos, led by the Honorable Edwin Ashwood, Member of Parliament. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Mr. President, Prime Minister, distinguished colleagues, it's my honor to welcome all of you to this 46th conference of the Caribbean, the Americas, and the Atlantic region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, being held under the theme, Democracy Challenges Facing Modern Parliaments. Especially for those who are visiting us, we welcome you to Georgetown, the Garden City of the Caribbean, and more particularly, the land of the 3 R's, rain, river, and rice. We have a very efficient opening ceremony, and I'd like to now call on the Honorable Stephen Twigg, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, to bring remarks.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much indeed, and good morning, everyone. Your Excellency, Mr. President, Dr. Mohammed Infa Ali, Honourable Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet, Mr. Speaker, other presiding officers from the region, members of Parliament, members of the diplomatic community, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to bring greetings from the CPA International Secretariat in London and from the International Executive Committee of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And I'm very pleased to be here in Georgetown on my first visit to this beautiful country. And if I can, I'm sure on behalf of everyone, thank Guyana for hosting the 46th Regional Conference of the CAA region. Thank you very much indeed. This year, 2024, is an important and significant year for all of us in the Commonwealth. This October, the Commonwealth heads of government will meet in Samoa, in the Pacific, and they will be electing the next Secretary General to succeed Baroness Patricia Scotland. And this feels like an appropriate time to remember one of her predecessors, Sir Sunny Ramphal, who sadly passed last week. Sir Sunny was the longest serving Secretary General of the Commonwealth. He was a powerful voice across a wide range of shared challenges of that time. If I might mention too, his advocacy on behalf of small states in general, including small island developing states, and the powerful and passionate leadership he provided in opposition to apartheid in South Africa. He was a towering figure, and we remember him with great fondness and respect. The shared challenges that we face that will be discussed at the conference this week include, of course, sustainable development, peace and security, climate change, and artificial intelligence. And all of this reinforces the importance of strong and effective multilateral institutions, be they global, like the UN and the Commonwealth, or be they at a regional level. And it also strengthens, in particular, the importance of celebrating our shared values as set out in the Commonwealth Charter, including those commitments to the rule of law, human rights, and inclusive political leadership. And for the CPA, these values are reflected across all of our work, which we will be discussing this week. But if I can particularly mention our three networks: Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, CWP, our Small Branches Network, and our much newer Disabilities Network. Our regions, of which we have 9, are the backbone of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. I want to thank Guyana not only for hosting us this week, but for providing the Secretariat for the CAA region. My appreciation is for all of those who represent this region at different levels in the governance of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, including on our International Executive Committee, those serving as steering committee members or regional champions, and in other ways. And if I may, I would like to thank 3 distinguished parliamentarians in particular from this region. The Honourable Arthur Holder, the Speaker of Barbados, who was elected as our Vice Chairperson last October, and then when our Chairperson, Ian Liddell-Granger, was unsuccessful in the recent UK general election, Honourable Holder immediately became our acting Chairperson, and it's a pleasure and a privilege for me to serve with the Honourable Holder in that capacity. Let me also mention someone who's not here today, the Honourable Bridget Anasette-George, the Speaker of Trinidad and Tobago, who has chaired our working group on governance and now chairs the interim executive board of the new CPA. And then thirdly, the Honourable Valerie Woods, the Speaker of Belize, who is a former Vice Chair of CWP and still serves as the regional representative for Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians for this region. As well as being important for the Commonwealth, this is a very significant year for us in the CPA, and I will finish with this point. For over 30 years now, as many of you will know, we have been seeking a new legal status akin to an international organisation, and I am absolutely delighted to say that in July, the new United Kingdom government, in its legislative programme in the King's Speech, announced that there is now to be a government bill that will provide the CPA with a legal status in UK law akin to an international organisation. And I'm immensely grateful to so many people here and those who've come before us who've worked so hard over such a long period to get us here. The bill has already had its second reading in the House of Lords. When we meet as the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association for our 67th conference in Sydney this year, we will consider the next steps. But I'm very confident that when we meet next year for the 68th CPC in Barbados, in this region, that we will have that new legal status in place in time for that Barbados 68th CPC in 2025. I'm here this week with my colleagues Jack Hardcastle and Jan Wallace, who will join us this afternoon. We're very much looking forward to taking part in the discussions ahead, and I'm very pleased to have this opportunity this morning to wish everyone here a successful and enjoyable regional conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. As we continue, let me say a hearty congratulations to our Indigenous people and all Guyanese on Heritage Month, which started yesterday. And we're meeting today in the Guyana. And for those who are visiting Guyana, especially for the first time, that means meeting place. It's a building like this in our over 250 indigenous villages that have structures as these, Guyana, where the council meets and decide on the development for the future. Mr. Sukai and all of our people, happy Heritage Month, and I will invite the Honorable Danesh Mahipal, representing the Leader of the Opposition, to bring remarks.
When I come down back. Your Excellency, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Mohamed Irfaan Ali, Honorable Prime Minister of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips, MP, Speaker of the National Assembly of Guyana, Mr. Manzoor Nadir, MP, and speakers across the Caribbean, the Americas, and the Atlantic region, Mr. Stephen Twigg, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, all members of parliaments across the region, members of the diplomatic community, clerks, presiding officers, special invitees, ladies and gentlemen all, a pleasant good morning. It is an honor and privilege to stand before you today as we gather for the 46th Conference of the Caribbean, the Americas, and the Atlantic region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. This year's theme, Democracy, Challenges Facing Modern Parliaments, is both timely and critical as we navigate the complexities and opportunities of our time. Before I proceed, I wish to convey apologies on behalf of Guyana's Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Aubrey Norton, MP, who is unable to be with us today due to his engagement in equally important work outside the jurisdiction. He has asked me to convey his gratitude to all who have gathered here and to warmly welcome all visitors to our beautiful country. Honorable Norton's commitment to the principles of democracy and good governance remains unwavering, and he regrets that he could not join us in person for this significant occasion. As representatives of the people, we are entrusted with the sacred duty of shaping the future of our nations. In parliaments across the world that I have had the opportunity to observe during my years as a politician, I have seen the crucial role that forward-thinking and responsible governance plays in the development of a nation. The challenges facing modern parliaments are many, but they also present us with opportunities to build stronger, more resilient democracies. Democracy has long been heralded as the most inclusive and representative form of governance, giving voice to the people and ensuring that those in power remain accountable. However, in today's rapid evolving world, parliaments, the very institutions that are the bedrock of democratic governance are facing unprecedented challenges. These challenges not only test the resilience of democratic systems, but also compel us to reconsider how we can strengthen and adapt our parliaments to better serve the people in an increasingly complex global landscape. One of the most significant challenges facing modern parliaments is the erosion of public trust, scandals, corruption, and the perception that elected officials are more interested in self-preservation than public service have contributed to widespread cynicism. This loss of faith in parliamentary institutions undermines the legitimacy of democracy itself. When people feel that their voices are not being heard or that their representatives are disconnected from their realities, voter apathy increases, and the very fabric of democracy begins to fray. To address this, parliaments must embrace transparency and accountability, not as buzzwords, but as guiding principles. Parliamentary proceedings should be accessible, and decision-making processes must be clear and open to scrutiny. By fostering a culture of honesty and integrity, parliaments can begin to rebuild the trust that is so vital to the functioning of democracy. Another pressing challenge is the growing polarization within many parliaments. Ideological divides have deepened, leading to gridlock and an inability to pass meaningful legislation. Instead of being arenas for constructive debate and compromise, parliaments are increasingly becoming battlegrounds for partisan conflicts. This partisanship hampers the ability of governments to address urgent issues, from economic inequality to climate change. To overcome this, we must reinvigorate the spirit of bipartisanship and collaboration within our parliamentary systems. Parliamentarians should prioritize the common good over party loyalty, working across the aisle to find solutions that benefit all citizens. This requires a shift in mindset, one that values dialogue and compromise over victory and dominance. In our interconnected world, parliaments are also grappling with the challenges posed by globalization, the rise of multinational corporations, the influence of international financial institutions, and the impact of global crises like pandemics and climate change all place immense pressure on national parliaments. These external forces often transcend borders and can undermine the sovereignty of parliaments, making it difficult for them to enact policies that prioritize national interests. Parliaments must therefore find ways to assert their authority in this globalized context. This might involve strengthening regional cooperation, ensuring the international agreements are negotiated with parliamentary oversight, and creating frameworks that allow for greater control over the impacts of globalization. Parliaments should also focus on enhancing their understanding of global issues, ensuring that they are well equipped to legislate in a world that is increasingly without borders. Technology, while offering new opportunities for engagement, also presents a significant challenge to modern parliaments. Social media platforms have transformed how information is disseminated, often spreading misinformation and polarizing public opinion. While these platforms can be powerful tools for communication, they can also undermine democratic processes by amplifying extremist views and enabling the spread of fake news. Parliaments must embrace technology in a way that strengthens democracy. This includes using digital tools to enhance public participation, making legislative processes more transparent, and combating misinformation through education and regulation. By harnessing the positive potential of technology, parliaments can become more responsive and inclusive institutions. The challenges facing modern parliaments are formidable, but they are not insurmountable. By addressing the erosion of trust, combating polarization, asserting sovereignty in the face of globalization, and harnessing technology responsibly, parliaments can evolve to meet the demands of the 21st century. As parliamentarians, we have a duty to ensure that our institutions remain resilient, responsive, and rooted in the principles of democracy. The future of our democratic systems depends on it. Let us commit ourselves to revitalizing our parliaments, ensuring that they are not just places of debates, but true arenas of democracy, where the voices of the people are heard, respected, and acted upon. Together, we can navigate the challenges of our time and build a stronger, more resilient democratic future. As we gather to discuss the challenges facing our parliaments, I ask you to consider the following. Do the people we represent feel truly represented by their members of parliaments? Have we as parliamentarians allowed the public's faith in our institutions to wane? In systems where the government can often have its way, what then is the purpose of the parliament? How can we as members of parliament better connect with and serve the people we represent? These questions are not just rhetorical. They demand serious reflection and action. The purpose of our parliaments must go beyond merely endorsing government policies. We must strive to be true representatives of our people, focusing on the issues that matter to them rather than getting entangled in partisan battles. Representation should be driven by the needs and concerns of our constituents, not by a desire to prove who is better or more powerful. The time has come for us to rethink our approach to governance. We must move away from the divisive politics that pit us against each other and instead work together to address the real issues that affect our people's lives. By fostering issue-based representation and collaboration, we can restore faith in our parliaments and ensure that they remain relevant and effective in serving the people's interests. In closing, I encourage all of our visitors to take the time to enjoy the natural beauty of Guyana, to immerse yourselves in its rich cultural heritage, and to experience the warmth and hospitality of our people. Engage with everyone you meet, for it is in these interactions that the true spirit of our nation is revealed. I wish this conference great success and hope that it inspires meaningful changes for the betterment of parliamentary democracies, ultimately benefiting the people of our respective countries. On behalf of the parliamentary opposition here in Guyana, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ganesh Mahipal. And now for a person who has spent his entire life in service to our nation, defended our people, our borders, our sovereignty, and now moving to represent the people, I bring you the Honorable Brigadier Mark Phillips, Leader of Government Business in the House and Prime Minister of Ghana.
His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Irfaan Ali, Honorable Manzoor Nadir, Speaker of the National Assembly of Guyana, Mr. Stephen Twigg, Secretary General, of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Speakers of the various houses represented here today, fellow members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished delegates, esteemed guests, and participants, members of the media, good morning to you all. It is my distinct honor and privilege as leader of the House to welcome you to the 46th Conference of the Caribbean, the Americas, and the Atlantic region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, hosted here in our beautiful country, Guyana. I extend a warm Guyanese welcome to all of you, especially those who have traveled from near and far to join us today. Today, as we gather under the theme, Democracy, Challenges Facing Modern Parliaments, we are called to reflect on the essence of our democratic institutions and the evolving role of parliaments in a rapidly changing world. This theme is both timely and imperative, as it speaks to the heart of the challenges we face as parliamentarians and as representatives of the people in an era marked by significant global shifts and emerging complexities. The theme of this year's conference prompts us to consider the multifaceted challenges that modern parliaments must navigate to uphold the tenets of democracy. These challenges range from issues that could lead to the erosion of public trust, to the growing influence of misinformation, and the pressures of globalization. We must also consider the impact of technological advancements, which, while offering new opportunities for engagement and governance, also pose risks to privacy and security. In Guyana, we are acutely aware of these challenges. As a nation, we have a rich history of democratic governance, but we have also faced periods of contention, division, and even threats to our democracy. Our experience has taught us that democracy is not a static achievement, but a continuous process that requires vigilance, adaptability, and most importantly, participation. It is this spirit of continuous improvement that guides us as we seek to strengthen our parliamentary institutions and ensure that they remain robust, inclusive, and responsive to the needs of our citizens. The PPPC administration remains steadfast in its commitment to embracing the core tenets of democracy, that is transparency, accountability, inclusivity, and the rule of law. We recognize that the strength of our democracy is directly linked to the strength of our parliamentary institutions. It is within these institutions that the voices of the people find representation, where diverse perspectives are debated, and where laws are enacted to advance the public good. In this regard, we've undertaken several initiatives aimed at enhancing the functioning of our parliament and ensuring that it remains a true reflection of the will of the people. We have strengthened our legislative processes to ensure greater scrutiny and debate, fostered a culture of bipartisanship, and worked tirelessly to enhance the transparency and accessibility of our parliamentary proceedings. We believe that by making Parliament more open and accessible, we can enhance public trust and encourage greater civic participation. Further, we are committed to advancing gender equality within our parliamentary processes. The establishment of our national chapter of the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, CWP, is a testament to this commitment. We recognize that a truly democratic parliament reflects the diversity of the society it represents, and we are determined to ensure that our legislative processes are inclusive and representative of all voices, including those of women, youth, and marginalized communities. It is encouraging to see similar commitments across our branches and regions within the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the CPA Caribbean, Americas, and the Atlantic region, with its 19 legislatures encompassing national, subnational, and territorial jurisdictions, serves as a dynamic platform for dialogue, cooperation, and shared learning. Each branch, therefore, contributes to our collective understanding of democracy and governance. Through regional conferences, workshops, and seminars, such as the one we are gathered for today, we have the opportunity to learn from each other's experiences, share best practices, and collectively address the challenges we face. The work of the CAA region, under the capable leadership of the regional chairperson, Mr. Manzoor Nadir, and the regional secretariat based here in Guyana, is instrumental in fostering a spirit of collaboration and unity among our member states. Distinguished guests, the challenges facing modern parliaments today remind us of the importance of active parliamentary participation in our democratic processes. It is through robust and inclusive parliamentary debates that we can effectively address the complex issues of our time, be it climate change, economic inequality, or the safeguarding of human rights. As parliamentarians, we have to engage with these issues with integrity, empathy, and a commitment to the common good. I would like to highlight the significance of the upcoming sessions during this conference. Each of these sessions provides strategic and significant opportunities for us to engage in meaningful dialogue, build networks, and enhance our capacity to respond to the challenges we face. As we look ahead, it is clear that our commitment to democracy requires continuous effort and renewal. Again, the theme of this conference reminds us that democracy is not without its challenges. However, it also reminds us of the tremendous opportunities that lie before us if we are willing to work together, learn from each other, and remain steadfast in our commitment to democratic principles. I wish to reiterate that the government of Guyana is deeply honored to host this significant gathering. We're committed to working with our colleagues across the CPA, Caribbean, Americas, and Atlantic region to advance the cause of democracy and strengthen our parliamentary institutions. I'm confident that this conference will catalyze positive change towards our collective goals, even as we reaffirm our commitment to democracy and to the principles that unite us as members of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Well answered. Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, last year, Guyana took over as the regional secretariat from Barbados of the Caribbean Parliamentary Association, and thanks to our clerk, Charlotte Isaacs, and his staff, we were and are able to hold this conference today. Our next item is a cultural performance from a group that comes from over 270 miles south of Georgetown. And their village has an area of 188 square miles. So many of you can understand how small that is. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of our heritage celebration, let us welcome the cultural group from Ruperti, which is one of the satellite villages of Anai community. Ruperti.
Yarmankong, Nungurangong, Tauya, Commonwealth, Pongong Ishabu, Monubere Bandu, Pada, Guyana, Kona, Tengi. Welcome to all the representatives of the Commonwealth countries, our beautiful country, Guyana, and I am saying it in my first language, and dance is entitled Let Us All Celebrate Heritage, all the nations, the 9 nations and everyone else to join with us in celebrating Heritage Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruperti. Our next speaker is the Honorable Arthur Holder, who became Speaker of the House in Barbados on the 5th of June 2018. He represents the parish of St. Michael Central. Prior to that, he was a senator. He now stands as the chairman of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. My colleague, Arthur.
His Excellency Dr. Ali, President of the Republic of Guyana, Prime Minister of Guyana, Cabinet Ministers, Presiding Officers, Speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct pleasure to be here as part of the delegation to this 46th CBA. The theme, even though appropriate, must examine from my perspective issues related to inward things within our parliament. Quite often, we talk about challenges facing parliaments and we look at exogenous variables. My challenge to this conference is let us look inwardly at some of the things that we can do better. We recognize that there are challenges, but our challenges are distinct from the external variables. Let us, for example, examine inclusion. How many of our parliaments are really interested in making gender equality and gender parity a reality? How many of us? Do our parliaments, in truth and in fact, put up female candidates in constituencies that they can win and become members of parliament? Or are we purposely putting candidates in areas that we know they can win so as to satisfy a quota? How many of our parliaments are looking at inclusivity as it relates to people with disabilities? Are we serious? Have we done enough to be more inclusive to our marginalized groups? These are things that we need to look at and examine. We speak of issues of transparency and accountability. How many of our parliaments really want to strengthen the Public Accounts Committee to ensure viability? How many? We can count them. How many of our parliaments, for example, want to expand selective committees so as to really get in and zone in on this thing called accountability and corruption? We speak a lot of AI, of artificial intelligence. How many of our parliaments have encompassed ways to really fight artificial intelligence and counter things on social media? Oftentimes we do not. Why? Because politicians see that as things to utilize in order to gain political advantage. These are some of the things that we need to do to really examine the themes. We speak of security. What have we done to improve security for parliamentarians inside and outside of Parliament? Are we going to wait to some of our parliamentarians are assassinated before we actually take vital steps to improve security? These are things that I want this conference to examine with purpose. Let us utilize our collective strengths. Let us renew our friendships. Let us mobilize our expertise to bring meaningful change to some of the things that we have to examine in this conference. Oftentimes, we use these things as buzzwords. So it is very easy to talk about AI. But do we really want to examine it with fear? This is my challenge. This is my challenge, my open challenge to this conference. Let us utilize the resources of our Caribbean nations. We have it within us to do that. Let us stop complaining and looking for excuses so as not to improve our parliaments. If we utilize our resources to improve our parliaments, then we as a united force can counteract all the global challenges that we face. That is my theme. I'm begging, I am imploring this conference. Don't let this conference be an example of conferences that might go on before. At the end of the day, what have we achieved? Have we been able to utilize the expertise that we gain from the conferences and present them to our parliaments. Oftentimes, we come to these conferences. For some, quite frankly, it might be a vacation for some. When we get back home, and I'm being frank, when we get back home, what have we done? What have we done to improve our parliamentary processes for the benefit of all? That is what we need to do to make our parliaments more effective and more meaningful so as to regain the trust of our populace. Until and unless we do that, politicians will be of no use to the countries. If you look on a daily basis, on a yearly basis, people have become apathetic as it relates to voting. Look at the elections. Oftentimes, you will see that there are decreases in persons who vote. One must ask oneself, why? Why? Are we serving the purpose that the persons put us here for? So that is all I'm asking. Let us inwardly look at ourselves. Let us project ourselves. Let us do what is right for the people who have placed us in these positions of authority. If we do that, I am sure that this conference can be the meaningful success that it can be. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Speaker Holder. And now it's an honor, a privilege, and with much appreciation to invite His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Irfaan Ali, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, to address us. Mr. President.
Please have your seat. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Distinguished delegates, speakers, parliamentarians, members of the diplomatic community, policymakers, good morning. I don't know, my brother, Speaker Holder, you don't have any challenge? My sister, Prime Minister Motley, give you opposition? You have no worry in the world, man. You have a smooth sailing as Speaker. But let me say how very pleased I am to be able to share a few thoughts with you. And perhaps Guyana is an important venue to host this parliamentary conference on democracy. Not because we are a strong democracy alone and we uphold democratic principles, but because perhaps we are the only country in the region, this region that gathered together, that has had the greatest threats, challenges, and open attack on democracy and the undermining of democracy. And as a result, we have had to work with our regional partners. And that is why I'm so happy that you're meeting as a region. Because it is our regional partners, it is CARICOM, and CARICOM's principal position that was part of the process in ensuring that our democracy remain strong and alive today. The UK, the EU, whose representatives are here, they also played an important role, and of course, the Commonwealth Secretary General and the Commonwealth itself played a key and critical role in ensuring democracy was secured in Guyana and still remain alive. Perhaps I had the opportunity of reading a pre-published piece recently Now when I say recently, in the last 48 hours, and there's a writer that is going for international publication, and the book is entitled Higher Mathematics, Where 33 Beat 32. Sorry, Where 32 Beat 33. That's the title of the book. And you guys are going to read that. It's a very interesting and beautiful piece that will be published internationally. But today, as I welcome you as friends, I want to also implore that this conference, which assembles some of the finest minds and dedicated practitioners of parliamentary democracy in the Caribbean, the Americas, and Atlantic region. I want to challenge you to come up with an action plan that is implementable and one that we can all commit to. I'm confident that your deliberations will do justice to the timely and relevant theme chosen for this conference: democracy, challenges for modern parliaments. But before we get into the challenges confronting democracy in modern parliaments, we have to examine the value system of democracy. We have to examine how democracy operates in all aspects of parliamentary life. The elections, because the elections is an important part of parliamentary life, because the representative comes from the election. Before you go to election, maybe you have your own internal election, Mahikol, and you have to examine that to ensure that that process also reflects the tenets of democracy. And if you examine regionally and internationally, many times you will see cracks in democracy at the foundational level. So many times we focus on the outcome of what should be democratic principles, what should be democratic arena. So we focus on the outcome, but democracy must transcend every walk of life. It must transcend every action within the society if we are to build and make it create a national architecture around the democracy. It is not, we sometimes shoot ourselves in the leg when we somehow believe that this democracy we speak about is a democracy only at the parliamentary level and only at the government level. Democracy transcends every aspect of life. Sometimes I smile at organizations talking about democracy. And when you examine those organizations, for decades they never had elections in electing their leaders. One person run organization, and then we take their word as the truth bearer on democracy. So we can beat ourselves up all the time as government and parliament. But how are we going to address these inherent dangers to democracy in our society? These inherent bodies that speak of democracy when they don't practice democratic principles. Democracy is about a society. It is about a country. It's about every walk of life. It's about civil society. It is about the private sector. It is about government. Every aspect of societal life must uphold the value system of democracy. But what is that value system? How is that value system defined? And different countries and different regions are conveniently designing what the value system and the definition of democracy is. And I'll come to that in a few moments. Guyana, your host, given its political history, is more than a useful experiment or a useful case study for examining the challenges to parliaments posed by threats to democracy. It is common knowledge that Guyana's political evolution has been marred by the perversion of democratic rule for almost 3 decades, followed by the restoration of democracy, and then an aborted attempt to subvert democratic elections. Guyana's experience also offers an insight into the relationship between democracy and the rule of law, between democracy and development, and democracy and stability. Our journey has been marked by the highs and lows accompanying the struggle for political and parliamentary democracy. And why I say this is important? This is important because when you look at periods of democratic threats, of periods when the rule of law is threatened, and you correlate that with economic expansion, economic impact, social fragment, and crime, you will see that there's a positive correlation. Because threats to democracy is a threat to the ecosystem of the country, of which the economy is an important aspect, of which security and stability are important aspects. Let me say that during those challenging days, years, and decades, when democracy came under threat and became non-existent for decades, Guyana's economy faltered, poverty deepened, and outward migration intensified. Our economy went into a tailspin, and extreme hardships visited our country. A political solution was championed as necessary for a return to the path of development. But undergirding that political solution was a need for a return to democracy through free and fair elections, a representative government and parliament emerging from the democratic will of the people and respect for constitutional freedoms. The period of democratic denial was a painful chapter in our history, one that we reflect on, but not with bitterness, but with a resolve to ensure that such a period never repeats itself. It was a period that is instructive about the perils of subverting democracy. When democracy was returned in 1992, it marked a turning point for Guyana. It was a time when the will of the people was restored and the foundations of a new era of governance were laid. Parliamentary democracy became more entrenched. Since then, we have witnessed the undeniable correlation between democratic governance and economic development. With the restoration of free and fair elections, the establishment of representative legislative assemblies, and the recommitment to human and constitutional rights, Guyana began once again to climb out of the depths of stagnation and into a period of economic revitalization and social progress. Now, my dear friend, the Speaker of Barbados, spoke about the correlation between democracy and threats to personality and person. In this region, where we had regional leaders, including the Prime Minister of Barbados, St. Vincent, Trinidad, and other countries, those who are members of the Bureau, when our democracy came under threat, and they intervened to ensure that Guyana remained on a democratic path, they came under threat. Social media was used by those who wanted to subvert democracy as a tool to attack them. And that is why my friend is right. If you look, and many times we don't examine that, the correlation between those who stand up and speak out for democracy against extremist views. So my friends, our experience underscores a fundamental truth. Democracy is just not a political system. It is the engine that drives development, and that is what we must understand. Democracy is not political commitment. Democracy is not confined to a political definition. Democracy is that engine that drives development, the shield that protects human dignity, and the framework that enables society to thrive. When democracy flourishes, so too does economic development. When the rights of the people are upheld, when their voices are heard, and when their representatives act in their best interests, nations are empowered to reach their full potential. But let me be clear, however, democracy is not self-sustaining. It has its challenges. It requires constant vigilance, active participation, and a commitment to upholding its principles even in the face of adversity. The foremost challenge in protecting parliamentary democracy, therefore, is to ensure respect for free and fair elections, the very basis of representative governments and parliaments. Elections that are truly reflective of the people's will are the cornerstone of any democratic society. And let me say, there are many bad examples we can point to, but I was most impressed with the just concluded UK elections. The smoothness of transition, the respect to the voters, the respect for the results, and the genuine way in which that transition took place is a case study of best practice. It's a case study of how transition can be managed. It's a case study of how elections transition should be managed. So there are, in this complex, challenging environment, case studies too, experiences that we can look at with hope, that we can look at with a sense of pride. Elections, they provide a legitimacy that allows parliaments to function as the true representatives of the people. To safeguard democracy, we must first ensure that our electoral processes are transparent, inclusive, and reflective of the will of the people. This means not only conducting free and fair elections, but also creating an environment where all citizens can participate fully and equally in this process. It means protecting the integrity of our electoral system from threats and ensuring that the outcomes of elections are respected and upheld. Equally important is the protection of constitutional rights, including fundamental human rights, which form the basis for safeguarding democratic norms and good governance. Without respect for these rights, democracy is hollowed out, and the very institutions that are meant to protect the public interests are weakened. In Guyana, we have learned that when human rights are violated, when freedoms are curtailed, and when the rule of law is subverted, democracy is not only undermined, but is put at a risk of collapse. We must therefore, across the Commonwealth, reaffirm our commitment to the protection of constitutional and human rights. These rights are not mere privileges granted by the state. They are inherent in every individual and must be protected with the utmost vigilance. Parliaments must serve as the guardians of these rights, ensuring that laws are enacted and enforced in ways that uphold the dignity and freedom of all citizens. Thirdly, we must strengthen our institutions of governance. Strong, independent institutions are the backbone of a healthy democracy. They ensure accountability, transparency, and the rule of law. Parliaments, as the representative bodies of the people, must lead by example in maintaining through robust oversight the integrity of public institutions. Fourthly, in most of our jurisdictions, there is an adversarial system of parliamentary democracy. On one side is the government that proposes, and on the other side, an opposition that mainly opposes. However, the fact that we embrace an adversarial system of parliamentary democracy does not mean that we must be enemies or there must be an absence of inclusion. In Guyana, we have crafted mechanisms within our constitution to ensure a greater role for the parliamentary opposition. Within the National Assembly, there are a number of oversight bodies in the opposition. Well, that is the problem with the inconvenient truth. It always echoes some response, as hollow as they may be. Within the National Assembly, I miss my parliamentary days. Within the National Assembly, there are a number of oversight bodies in which the opposition is represented. The Public Accounts Committee is chaired by the opposition. We utilize the mechanism of select committees to achieve greater consensus on legislation. We have sector committees that allow for a contribution from across the political aisle. And we continue to incorporate in our legislation representation of the opposition and civil society on statutory bodies. I'm sure today that all parliamentarians were invited to this function, Mr. Speaker. The clerk of the National Assembly can confirm. Let us look whether all the parliamentarians who are invited are here and then ask who is erring in their responsibility. We may do a fact check now, if you like. The appointments to key public offices, such as that of the Chancellor, the Chief Justice of the Judiciary, and the Commissioner of Police, requires the consent of the Leader of the Opposition. This consensual mechanism, however, had led to gridlock and frustrated appointments, and there is a lesson to be learned from this. You cannot always legislate political inclusion, cooperation, or consensus. Facts. This is why I believe that much more can and should be done to foster a culture of dialogue and inclusion. Democracy thrives in an environment where diverse voices are heard, and where differences are respected. In our increasingly polarized world, it is more important than ever that we promote dialogue and understanding, both within our parliaments and within our societies. It will also be helpful if our exchanges within our legislative assemblies could be more respectful and civil. In today's world, modern parliaments face many challenges that threaten the health of our democracies. From the spread of misinformation and the manipulation of electoral processes to the weakening of institutions and the rise of populist movements that seek to undermine democratic norms. The obstacles are many and varied. However, these challenges are not insurmountable. Misinformation poses a significant threat, and this has been a key word in all the presentations so far. Misinformation poses a significant threat to parliamentary democracy, especially in the age of social media, where false or misleading information can spread rapidly and widely. Social media platforms provide unprecedented reach, allowing misinformation to be disseminated quickly to millions of people, often without verification for accuracy. This can distort public perception, erode trust in democratic institutions, and manipulate voter behavior, leading to the polarization of societies and undermining the legitimacy of elected representatives. When misinformation takes root, it can create confusion, fuel political and social divisions, and weaken the informed public discourse that is essential for the healthy functioning of parliamentary democracy. By distorting the truth and spreading false narratives, misinformation can disrupt the democratic process, manipulate electoral outcomes, and ultimately threaten the stability and integrity of democratic governance. The rise of extreme ideologies, such as right or left-wing nationalism and extreme populism, poses a significant threat to democracy. By undermining the foundational principles of pluralism, tolerance, and inclusive governance, These ideologies often promote divisive and exclusionary narratives, pitting different segments of society against each other and scapegoating minorities or marginalized groups such as immigrants. This is a major challenge that the global system is faced with. Extreme populist leaders sometimes find it useful to undermine democratic institutions. But we have to understand the nature of democracy is such that if you toy with it, one day you will be toyed with. Democracy is not a convenient tool. Democracy is the fixed part of that equation of national life that cannot be toyed with. Democracy is not a feel-good thing. Democracy is real. It is application. It is part of living it. It's a way of life. It's not a custom or a tradition. It is a foundational pillar in a modern society. In light of the diverse threats facing parliamentary democracy today, it is imperative that we make greater efforts to insulate and protect our modern parliaments. Parliaments must be equipped to resist these threats, whether it be misinformation, ideology, and guard against any erosion of democratic norms and values. I now wish to turn to some uneasy issues. Some very, very uneasy issues that we in this region are tiptoeing around with the belief that if we take a firm stand, our democratic right of free speech, our democratic right of free thinking, our democratic right of upholding the truth and preserving human dignity would somehow be affected. What am I speaking about? What are these non-traditional threats that we don't even have sometimes the strength of character to speak about or to put on the forefront of our parliamentary agenda? The first one is war and conflict. How is war and conflict undermining democracy? If democracy is our ability to speak freely, openly, frankly, and honestly, if democracy is our ability to uphold human dignity, then where is our democracy when the sovereignty of countries are threatened? Does democracy take a backseat then for economic prosperity or bilateral relationship? When children are bombed, when terrorists operate openly, when genocide is committed on women and children, where is our democracy that protects human dignity? Where is our democracy and our will to speak out against injustice that is an important tenet of democracy? Where is our democracy then when the rights to live freely of children and women are trampled upon? Where is our voice on democracy? Where is our passion for democracy? Speakers and parliamentarians, where it is? We can speak from on top of the roof at conferences, but when it matters, where is our voices? Hundreds of thousands of persons already slaughtered in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Tens of thousands of children slaughtered in Palestine. Where are the voices of virtue and truth and honor and dignity that constitute democracy? Where is the collective parliamentary voice? Democracy is only when you're subject of lectures. Or democracy is only the output of craftsmanship. Let us be real. Let us be real. Where are our voices when the will of the people is trampled upon? When the verification process of elections are ignored? Where are our collective voices? Where are our collective thinking? Where are our collective positions on democracy? If we are to truly believe in democracy, it cannot be a fair weather system. It cannot be a system that is subject to economic gains. It has to be a system that is subject to the values and meaning that shape what democracy is. It cannot be democracy, cannot work because we are afraid of who our voices may offend in the process of upholding dignity. That cannot be what democracy is. So that's one threat. War and conflict. Climate change, another threat to democracy. Who will stand up? How would our collective voice influence the climate agenda that has the potential of eroding the livelihood of tens of millions of people, especially in our region, that is damaging communities and livelihood, that is taking away the freedom of people to live where they want to live because of the threat of climate change, that is threatening the survival of nation. That is the foundation of democracy. How are we dealing with the threat of climate change on democracy? How are we dealing with the threat of international policy making, call it globalization? Because this too is a threat to democracy. When you look at COVID and where small countries and poorer countries had to be in the line for vaccination, it tells you something. We are not in a fair world. We are not in a just world. We are in a system that is undemocratic because all humans are not treated equally. And that's a tenet of democracy. But these are the side steps that we don't like to touch. How are we going to deal with this challenge? The challenge of globalization when the international trade system is biased. Because if your freedom to trade freely with each other, if your freedom to participate in the global system is threatened, then it's a democratic issue. And you are leaders, you're policy makers. How do we address these? AI. How are we going to come up with a common strategy? AI is going to be a critical challenge for democracy. Because democracy is built on a foundation of trust. It is built on a foundation of facts. How are we adjusting our parliamentary system to fact check? To ensure that AI does not take over our parliamentary system and we become a source of misinformation in countries and society. And the parliament becomes a custodian of peddling untruths, distorting information, creating conflict and expanding division. We have to ensure that this non-traditional threat is catered for, that we build in our mechanism, our research capability. The research arm of Parliament has to be different from what it was 3 years ago, 10 years ago. The training programs that our parliamentary staff are undergoing must be revised to deal with these challenges. So my friends, I know I have exceeded your kindness in allowing me a few moments to speak with you, but I'll make it up at dinner with you. I'm confident that this conference will provide a critical platform for robust discussions on the many challenges that parliamentary democracy faces today. By bringing together representatives and delegates from across the Commonwealth, this conference has a unique opportunity to share experiences, insights, and strategies that can help us better navigate these complex issues. Through your deliberations, I'm optimistic that we can develop a compendium of best practices aimed at safeguarding our democratic institutions, ensuring they remain resilient, inclusive, and capable of upholding the sovereignty of the people. Remember, democracy for us is dead if all of us are not equal as human beings. That is why we have an equal task to denounce hate, racism, terrorism, elections that are not free and fair, governments that are dictatorship, and situations where the sovereign right of any territory is threatened. We have a responsibility when human dignity is taken away to collectively fight for human dignity to be returned. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, you can understand the passion, the sincerity, and the work for the people, which His Excellency has endeavored as part of his service to the nation. Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our opening ceremony. Let me express my appreciation first to the clerk and his staff for organizing the 46th conference, to all of you who have attended, and more particularly to His Excellency for his inspirational address. Thank you. Please join us for a few drinks. Can I ask our delegates if they can come forward, and His Excellency to take a photograph with our delegates to the 46th conference, please. Honorable members from Guyana too, part of the delegation, please. Probably around 60, 70. The photographers are saying we'll do it outside of the Guyana. All right, thank you.
No, but we could come set the podium? Sorry? Please come and set the podium.
That's my area.
Ready?
And that's performance. And that particular in Parliament.
We're with you. Sorry.